No mai, haere mai. Welcome to the Maxim Institute podcast. My name is Jason, and I'm the Communications Manager at Maxim Institute. This is our weekly short-form podcast. These podcasts are released in tandem with our weekly column and are a chance for you to hear in depth from the column's author about some of the thinking that went into producing their final piece.
Today, we speak with Communications Manager Jason Heale about his most recent column.
Jason, welcome to the program, mate.
Good to be here, Thomas.
So we're switching it up this week. I'm interviewing you for once, a bit of a change. Talking about your column, The Geopolitics of Our Energy Crisis. Energy crisis, I've just had to pay my power bill actually. Wasn't that happy about it. What's going on with power?
Yeah, I've got one coming up as well, and I'm not looking forward to the money coming out of my bank account either. No, there's a lot of things going on with power. One is I don't know if you remember about 3 or 4 months ago on what was the coldest day of the year at the time. Up to that point, we were told between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. don't charge your phones. Don't turn on your heating because the grid might go down. You're like, what? So we were told that. So there's kind of that factor that the grid can't handle. If everyone turns on everything all at the same time, our grid can't handle it. We can't handle that amount of energy. The other is that we're kind of running out of sources of power generation, and that New Zealand is a net energy importer. That means we don't generate enough power ourselves, and we have to import. Usually it's coal, sometimes it's oil, sometimes it's even, we're looking at LNG, liquid natural gas, but that's quite expensive to do, and there's a lot of other things around that. But it means that we're reliant on external forces for generating, and we're just not generating enough energy. So that's why the prices are going up, because now we need more gas, because hydro lakes are like less than 50% capacity. The sun doesn't always shine for solar. The wind doesn't always blow for wind power, and we just don't have enough capacity.
And so we don't have enough capacity generating here at the moment, and so we're importing a lot. You mentioned importing's getting a bit harder, or it looks like it might be getting harder than it has been. Yeah,
so that was the geopolitical angle that I took on the column, because a lot of people I saw commenting like, oh, we need regulation, we need to break up the oligopoly, which I think was a new word that I learned this week, of the big four gentailers, which I always thought was interesting, that you create a product, then you sell it to yourself to sell on to other people, which is, anyway, that's for other people to look into. But for me, the geopolitics came in because of the net importing, because we rely on shipping, we rely on what has been termed the rules-based international order, or the rules-based order, and that's kind of fragmenting. And we're seeing that happening kind of slowly, but then all of a sudden, I think there's particularly two things that concern me. One is China and their increasing aggression towards Taiwan and their expansion in the South China Sea. So even as early as recently as last week, they were invading Taiwan's airspace. So their jets fly into Taiwan's airspace, and Taiwan sends some jets back. And so there's this backwards and forwards that's getting a bit more aggressive. So there's that danger. And I saw our Prime Minister, when he was talking in Australia, said that Ukraine could happen here in the South Pacific. And he didn't point any fingers, but he just made that nod. And I thought, well, that's really interesting given what's happening. And then the other thing is the way that Russia has weaponized its Nord Stream 1 gas pipeline into Germany. So they, after the invasion and everyone was kind of sanctioning them and everything like that, they were like, well, we'll just cut gas. So I think 95% of Germany's gas comes through the Nord Stream 1, and Russia just slowly turned the gas down, just like less and less. And I think it was at about 5% of its capacity. And that just drove prices up. Germany had to scramble. They'd shut down and mothballed all their nuclear power plants. So you can't just bring a nuclear power plant back online. So they had to get coal, and they got, there's a form of coal called lignite coal, which is like the most or the least carbon friendly type of coal. So they were burning really terrible coal, and it was weaponized in that sense, drove prices up. There was a big scare in Germany. Are they going to make it through the winter? Are they going to be able to heat themselves? And so there's those sorts of things that are happening. And of course, there's kind of local wars, if you want to put it that way, popping off all over the place as well. So those are things to be mindful of, given that particularly the South China Sea stuff, because that's a shipping lane kind of incursion for us. And so if we are reliant on shipping to ship our coal and everything in here, and that shipping is disrupted, like I remember what happened to shipping prices during the COVID pandemic when we were trying to have social distance and everyone shut down. I think the price of a container went to over $10,000 to ship.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like 5 times the price of what it was pre-COVID. And I don't think it's gone down, but like even another simple disruption could drive those prices up, disrupt our energy, and what are we going to do?
Yeah, and you mentioned the rules-based kind of international order that has allowed us to be an energy importer without too much in the way of incidents, but also that that was perhaps secured by America and their sort of being a unipolar world and being the only power at play. But their current crop of presidential candidates might be less keen on policing the world.
Yeah, that's right. So we know that President Trump, when he was in office, he championed his America First policy, which saw him withdraw from a whole lot of unilateral kind of agreements.
Multilateral agreements.
Sorry, multilateral agreements.
Yep.
Thanks for catching me on that. But things like, and I think they pulled out of Iran, the Iran deal and things like that. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened there. The Democrats, President Biden, were more conciliatory, but still, particularly with China, America still sees China as an opponent, as someone who kind of a belligerent in that sense, and they. The Democrats are kind of waging more of a soft war on China, so sanctions and things like that. And that's signaled to continue. And so there's this growing kind of Cold War that's going on, economic war, that could easily, if something happens in Taiwan, it's kind of game on, So they're signaling, America's signaling, we're looking after our own interests above this kind of maintenance of shipping lanes and things like that. So again, our shipping lanes are all policed, for want of a better term, by the United States. They're the United States and I think Japan are the only 2 navies in the world that can operate globally. And so we really do rely on them. And if they say, well, we don't feel like sending our destroyers out to police the Pacific or the South Pacific or the Indian Ocean or whatever, that's trouble.
Leaves us vulnerable.
Yeah, because we've seen the rise of pirates and the Houthi rebels and stuff around the Red Sea. That could happen in other places as well. So yeah, very vulnerable.
So these are the cards we've been dealt, a more unstable world. What do we do about it? Thinking about energy.
We need to be self-sufficient. And I think this is kind of the drum that I bang around the office. I wrote a column about conscription and defense as well, and that we need to be able to look after ourselves in a difficult world. It's not that we withdraw, like I'm not suggesting an America First type of withdraw from the global order, but we need to make sure that we are looking after ourselves, that we can function. If things go south, we need to be, I think of it as you're looking after your house, right? This is our house. This country is our home. And we want to make sure that we can feed ourselves, that we can protect ourselves, that we can turn the power on, that we can generate enough security, economic security for our society to function if something goes wrong. And so in terms of power, that's like upgrading our grid, like that should be the first on our list, so that when everyone's pulling energy, it can handle it. I a couple of years ago spoke to a guy who's an engineer for Vector, and he was like, if everyone plugged their things, if we went 100% electric cars, the grid would just shut down because we can't handle it. it needs to be upgraded. So that should be number one. Upgrade the infrastructure to get the power around the country that we need. Then look at ways of generating more power. So is that, I think opening up oil and gas exploration is a good thing. I think we can offset that with carbon sinks or even investing in carbon capture technology, or we could look at hydrogen-based energy. So using our solar or wind or hydro to turn, to process hydrogen and use that in batteries and things like that. But it needs to also be things that aren't reliant so much on shipping in microchips and things like that. So it's and that's why I think we know how to do oil and gas. The problem is that we can't process our oil here, so we have to ship it overseas to get it processed to bring it back again because we shut down Marsden Point. So there's a whole bunch of issues, but I think we need to think seriously long term about how we buffer ourselves against this kind of fragmenting global order.
So what I'm hearing is chase as many options for power as we can, go in all directions and not pick and choose, which is the one kind of basket to put all of our eggs in.
Yep.
We need power, get it from wherever we can.
I think so, and realize that encourage innovation, because we are, New Zealanders are innovative, and if you let us, I think we can come up with solutions that will offset some of the environmental downsides to some of these things. So, but I think we need to have the options to do it.
Options to do things and innovation and trusting in New Zealanders to adapt as we need. Really good thoughts, Jason. Thanks for sharing with us.
Thanks for having me.
New Zealand's energy gap isn't simply a domestic issue. It's a warning about our vulnerability in a rapidly changing world. As power costs surge, companies like Ojai Fibre are on the brink of closure, while Methanex, once a major natural gas processor, is selling off resources instead of producing, and making more money doing so. Simply put, cashing out is more profitable than keeping the lights on. Critics like Dr. Bryce Edwards blame the big four power companies for acting like a cartel, price gouging consumers while neglecting infrastructure. However, while corporate greed and government inaction play a role, they don't tell the whole story. New Zealand's recurring power shortages reflect a world in flux, where shifting global dynamics and deglobalization are shaking the ground beneath us. China's expansion in the South China Sea threatens shipping lanes, while Russia's weaponization of energy in Europe exposes the fragility of global supply chains. As BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa nations gain influence, the global energy market is fragmenting, turning our reliance on imported energy from a luxury into a liability. The old rules-based world order has afforded New Zealand status as a net energy importer. However, this is a dangerous gamble in this new era of resource competition, with both US presidential candidates signaling a stepping back from the role as the free world security guard. Countries like ours are exposed. As an island nation far from major energy producers, we depend on long, fragile supply chains. Remember the spike in shipping costs during COVID-19? The Drewry World Container Index showed container prices jumped from below $2,000 to over $10,000 between March 2020 and March 2022. Rising maritime conflicts and less reliable trade routes reduce our energy security. Recent power crises are just the first warnings of the potential upheaval a destabilized global order could bring. Yes, renewables are vital for a sustainable future, but this strategy is too narrow. Solar and wind, while essential, are also intermittent, and they use imported technology, making them unreliable in a world of unstable supply chains. Hydro? It's tapped out. We must diversify our energy sources to ensure New Zealand can keep the lights on even when the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow. Our small population limits our ability to scale energy production, making self-sufficiency even more challenging. The solution isn't to abandon green energy, but to diversify with geopolitical realities in mind. We need to start by upgrading our energy grid, which was nearly overwhelmed earlier this year. Investing in reliable, domestically produced energy sources like oil, gas, and geothermal is essential, especially if global supply chains collapse. This can be managed to offset the carbon output by investing in carbon sinks or carbon capture technologies. As the global order shifts, nations that secure their energy independence will thrive. As Contact Energy CEO Mike Fugue notes, New Zealand needs 30 to 40 big new power plants by 2035. The time to act is now. The world is changing.
Thanks for listening to the Maxim Institute podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us and keep up with the rest of our research and analysis of politics and policy in New Zealand, you can sign up on the homepage of our website to get our monthly forum email and invitations to future Maxim Institute events. You can search and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. From the team at Maxim, mā te wā, goodbye for now.